Welcome, everyone, to the Improvly Speaking podcast. I'm so happy you're here today, and honestly, I'm going to tell you, you're going to be happy you're here today, too, listening to this amazing guest we have on. As you know, or if you're new joining, on this podcast, I like to talk to guests with varying levels of improv experience, from your experienced improvisers and artistic directors to people who sign up for classes to help them with public speaking skills and gaining more confidence. And our guest today is, dare I say, an improv legend who has been in the improv game for over 20 years as a student, performer, instructor, coach, director, you name it, he's done it all. And he is fantastic. And you are just in for such a treat today. Let me tell you about our amazing, fantastical guest today, Brian James O'Connell. Brian James O'Connell is a working actor, writer, director, filmmaker, and teacher based in Los Angeles. Brian is a graduate of the prestigious North Carolina School of the Arts and moved to Los Angeles in 2000 to follow his dreams of a career in filmmaking. BOC, as his friends and students call him, which we will call him throughout this, taught as part of the core faculty at the Pack Theater and at IO West, may it rest in peace now, for over a decade before pursuing his own independent and curated student training called All Improv. As a regular performer, coach, and teacher in LA, Brian derives most of his approach to improv from the Deconstruction, which we will talk more about in this interview for sure. BOC serves on the board for Camp Improv Utopia, which I've had on many Camp Improv Utopia guests. I love that camp. And he has performed at many, and I mean many, too many to count and number, improv festivals. He is famous for his encyclopedic knowledge of minutia and his insane recall ability, which may become very apparent in this episode today. Please welcome the man, the myth, the improv legend himself, Brian James O'Connell. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. That is beyond humbling and flattering. Thank you. I'm Irish Catholic, so it's like when the compliments start stacking up, it's like, no, no.
Who's
Be
that?
humble.
That can't be me. What? It's all you, though. That's an amazing bio. And I left out so much, by the way, just because our attention spans, but you've done a ton. You're just such a creator in general. It's amazing.
Well, I try to be. Thank you for that. Yeah, I try to have as many irons in the fire as humanly possible. So you end up showing up in a lot of places. Maybe I'm the Forrest Gump of improv, where I'm just always like there in the background.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you for having me on. It's going to be great. Wherever you want to start, we can start with.
We're talking about your favorite subject today, improv, right?
Oh, fantastic.
Yes. And before we talk all improv, BOC, I have to take a moment and just tell you thank you, because you are actually a big part of this podcast continuing on and actually starting. And I'll set the scene here on why that is such a statement. I took your Deconstruction class at Camp Improv Utopia in September 22. And before we recorded, I went and reread my emails. We had a whole thread going. There were 20 people in our class, and we had a whole email thread going afterwards, like all of the takeaways and lessons learned from camp and what we got out of it. And what I read from my email was my biggest takeaways were intensity. So meaning I was really locked into the show. I wasn't in my head thinking, oh, that was a weird decision. I was just so intense about it that I hadn't felt that before. And I had the lesson of permission and freedom, which was so transformational for me, because I had made the decision to do the podcast, but I was still like nervous about it. I was worried what people would think of me. I'm like, I'm a newbie improviser. What do I know? and just everything you said in those 10 to 12 hours that we had at camp, it pushed me. It was like, that is exactly what I needed to hear to keep this podcast going. So, I gotta say, I don't know if I would have started the podcast right away if I hadn't had that camp experience. So, thank
Oh
you.
man, that's thank you. I really appreciate that. I really enjoy hearing those things. I love improv, but I also love NBA basketball. And one of the people I really look up to is a guy by the name of Coach David Thorpe. He works with a lot of, he has his own business. He works individually with a lot of different NBA players, longtime coach. And he said something that I really responded to as a teacher. He says, our first job is to inspire.
Mhm.
Before anything else, our first job is to inspire, because without that, everything else is. So when I hear from people like yourself that are doing these projects, which I think they're important, you said, oh, I'm just a newbie. I'm like, but yeah, that's also a new perspective. I would have loved to have had a podcast back in the 10,000 years ago when I started, having that perspective of seeing someone. We talk about on the improv stage of representation matters. You have to see someone that looks like you doing the thing that gives you, like you said, permission. It goes like, well, they can do it, then maybe I can do it. And so early on, I'm sure there's a lot of people that listen to your podcast who are right where you are or just starting. So it's nice for them to hear that, oh, I'm not crazy. This does get better. Like,
Eh
oh, I don't
yes.
suck. This is just the time to do reps. So you're doing the Lord's work. And I'm very honored that I had a small part in inspiring that. Coach Thorpe would be happy.
I mean, I recorded a whole solo episode called "Taking the Leap," uh, at Improv Camp and Beyond, where I talk about my deconstruction experience at camp, and then also at another improv camp where we actually did the whole get a harness on and you go up and you, like, take a jump and leap, and just both of those experiences really it helped me just keep going in this, and I just yeah, look at me now, like, I'm 20 plus episodes in,
Yeah.
maybe 30 when this comes out, I don't know, whatever number, it has started, it has begun, it feels like a part of me now, and I still have some of
Mhm.
those questions of, "What am I doing?" But I don't question why I'm doing it, and that's important.
Yeah. Send me the link to that one where you talk about the decon. I'll add it to the list.
You know what? Of course, I will, and it's the one episode, that I recorded with the wrong microphone, and, so the
Always.
sound quality right, the sound quality is not the best. I do make a note of that in the beginning just to give listeners a heads up, but it is actually one that's been listened to quite a bit too, so I'm like, "Of all the episodes," right? But I talk a lot about letting go of perfection in improv, right? You let go of perfection.
Mhm.
I was not about to re-record that. What I recorded was special, and I was not about to re-record to make it quote unquote perfect. So I let go of perfection and I
Yeah.
released it as it was.
Excellent. Excellent. I talk about that a lot in filmmaking too, when people are just getting started and they're worried about, oh, is this going to look too low budget, or I don't really have the money to make it. I said, at the end of the day, everyone has a movie that, like, it may not be the greatest cinematography. There may be some amateurism or inexperience, is a better word, inexperience going into it. But if you're lost in the story and you think those two people are actually in love and you want to see them get together and prevail, then it's your favorite movie. And all that other stuff is just gravy. At the end of the day, we're storytellers. That was at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, that was beaten into us constantly, that it's your storytellers, whether you're a cinematographer, an editor, or a producer, whatever, key grip, whatever job you're doing, we're all servicing storytelling. And a lot of that is in the corporate world too. I worked in a Barnes and Noble, but I worked in the
Oh,
Starbucks cafe. So I was serving two
nice.
corporate masters at once. I did that for a
Yeah.
couple of years in college. And even then, they would make it very clear to us. They're like, even though you're working for Starbucks and you're slinging coffee and soups, this is a Barnes and Noble. We are booksellers. Everyone here is a bookseller. We are here to sell books. And I was like, oh, interesting. Noted. Noted. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that it exists, and I hope you break 100.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. We're here to learn and hear all about your improv journey, and I know it's
Mhm.
extensive, so give us the long and short, the whatever version you wanna give us. Why and how did you get started in improv?
It's very fortunate for you that we're recording this when we're recording this. Today is January 19th, 2024.
Uh-huh.
Um, January 19th, 2003 is when I saw my first long form improv show. It was a Sunday night at 11 o'clock
Wow.
at IO West in Hollywood, California. A girl I dated in college, Rebecca, who I stayed friendly with afterwards, said, "Come see my improv show." And I said, "Oh, yeah, of course, sure. When is it?" She goes, "It's Sunday night at 11 o'clock." And I was like, "Well, I'm broke and I don't have HBO, so I'm not going to be watching The Sopranos or anything. So, yeah, sure. I'll come on down." That group was called Tiger Pants. They just happened to have the greatest show that they had ever had. I still remember large swaths of it. There was no one there. There was like me and five other people in a place that can sit like just over 100. But they did it, and it looked like magic to me. It looked like wizardry. Like at one point, Rebecca was in a scene with Brett Pearson's. He was juggling, doing space work, and then he laid down on his back and was also juggling with his hands and his feet. I was like, who thinks of this? There was a storyline that a guy had invented a kite that you could put your kid in. They were at a picnic, and so Rebecca is watching him juggle with his hands and his feet, and Pete Carboni Bones walks by in the background. He's Kevin, because he like let go of the kite,
Oh,
and now his
no.
kid's like on the sky. I'm just like, oh my god. And so that was the last show of the night. They didn't have a second person, a second group in the hour. So at 11:30 something, they took their bows, and the house manager came out and said, "Thank you so much, guys, for coming out tonight. If you like what we see here, we do offer classes." And I ran downstairs. I was watching from the balcony, just losing my shit. Ran downstairs and went right to the box office. The poor box office intern is just trying to close up for the night. And I like a movie, I like put my hand as they're like closing the door that goes over the window. And I was just like, pfft. I was like, "Classes here, can take, I heard." And they're like, "Oh yeah, we sign up. You just missed signups for level one. It started back in January, so it's too far in. But if you call the office tomorrow, Monday at noon when they open up, they're always taking signups for level one, and the next one starts like March 1st." And I next day, 12:01, phone in one hand, credit card in the other, and I was just like, "Here we go." And just that was it. Paul Valancourt talks about that a lot. The first time he ever saw an improv show, he said, "I remember saying physically out loud, this is the thing I'm going to do with the rest of my life." And he was my level one
Yes.
teacher, so it's perfect that we met. But
Wow.
I did remember sitting there. I didn't say it out loud, but I do remember watching that show. About halfway through, I just said, "I have to do this. I don't know what this is. I have to do this." And then, of course, as I did a modicum of research, as my entire family is from Chicago, and I was like, "You bastards. No one, all those summer vacations, all those family reunions, no one thought to say, like, hey, Brian likes comedy. Let's take him to a Second City show." The thought that I could have been, as a teenager, could have been at the summer intensive in IO, staying with my Aunt Kathy, God rest her soul, who was also my godmother for 6 weeks. My parents would have loved to have me out of the house for 6 weeks, I'm sure. My aunt would have loved having me there. I could have seen show. I could have met Miles. Like, so many years, 10 years before I had. That's why Heather Ann Campbell is always going to be better than me, because she does everything I do, but just better. And she got Miles 10 years before I did. So thankfully,
Mhm.
that's how it all started. And I was just like, never left. I was very lucky to find my personal brand as well. I've heard other stories of people like, "Oh, I took some classes here, but they were mean," or "I took some classes here and I didn't vibe with anyone." They had to go to a couple different theaters before, or they had to move to a different town and start improv again. And they're like, "Oh, now I've found my tribe." I was immediate. I took level one. I paid for level one. I became an intern. I became the physical plant intern. So all my classes after that were paid through internships. And then level two is where I met a majority of the people that were on my first two teams. And we all really got along together. And we did that thing where it's like, all right, level threes are going to be on Wednesdays and Sundays. Which day are we going to do? Okay, we're all
Oh,
going to do
yes.
Wednesday. We'll switch your shift at the restaurant. Scott, be on Wednesday. It's like that thing. And just all the way through. So yeah, that was my March 1st of 2003 was my first class, and I graduated and had my last level six grad show. I remember it was March 1st or 2nd of 2004. And I remember because we all had a party at
Wow.
Jesse Blank's house and the Oscars were on. And that's the day that Lord of the Rings Return of the King just swept. So it was very easy for me to remember
Mm.
all this stuff is.
Again, that
Yeah.
recall ability I mentioned in your bio. Yep. It is.
Blessing and a curse. It's a blessing and a curse because, like last night, I was doing a self tape with Alyssa Phillips, who used to be the office manager and then the first official artistic director of the Pack Theater. We do all of our self tapes together. We'll read for each other. And she was
Nice.
talking about this is a guy named Matty. I think it's Matty Cappadocia. I'm probably not saying that last name correctly, but he was in Stranger Things. He's been in a bunch of other stuff. And she had done a stand-up show where he was at. I was like, oh, that's great. He's a former student. He's got one of my favorite, like, we were doing a transaction scene. He was being the employee and he was being the logical position, right? But he was also being his own fun, quirky thing. Because the guy asked, do you guys serve ham here? And like, he just did a slow look up at the menu and then looked back and went, yeah. And like, I always use that as an example of like the logical position doesn't just have to be boring. You can also create jokes. She was like, how do you remember this? And I'm like, I don't know. And this also annoys my girlfriend because there'll be important stuff that I will just absolutely forget to the point now where she'll make that joke every once in a while where it's like, oh, I don't remember. Oh, we're doing that? I don't remember that. She's like, if it was an improv show from 10 years ago, I'm sure you'd remember it.
Right.
I was like, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I just have to take it. I just have to take the hit.
She knows. Yeah.
She knows. She knows who I am. She knew what she was getting into.
And I love that we just happened to chat and record this on 1/19/24, 21 years
The
later,
day.
which before the
Yep.
internet, before probably they had an iOS web page that you could sign up for classes, you had to
Mhm.
go to the box office and call a number to sign up for
Yeah.
classes.
Yeah. God, I was wondering if I could still remember.
If you remember the
I was just
number,
trying to remember. I was going. I know it's nine. I know it's 323-965. I think it's no, it's 323-964-0765. I think it might have been the IO number because I was there for so long, right till the bitter end. So I've called that number thousands of times, tens of
someone f
thousands of
we
times.
will fact check you after this to see,
We,
but I have a feeling
I
you're
don't think that's.
right.
I don't think I'm spot on, but I'm close. It's definitely 323-964. Yeah, and then the fax number was the same, but 88.
Oh my
The last
god.
numbers were
The
88.
fax number.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you've been doing improv for 21 years. Now, to the day, almost, I guess March 1st,
Almost.
03. But anyway, almost to the
For sure.
day you've been doing improv. Why do you keep doing it? Or now, I mean, you're teaching it more, but you still do it, you perform. I mean, why? Why do you have you stayed in it?
Yeah, I think it just had all the stuff that I like. Like I'm a filmmaker, but I was also a working musician for 8 years in North Carolina, where I'm from. So I sang lead, I played rhythm guitar, I wrote 85% of the material in any band I was in. I did forensics in high school, which is like debate, but also that has theatrical elements. It's debate and events is what they call it,
Hmm.
as the two sides. I was really good at that. I played club soccer and varsity soccer. I played soccer for years and years. So that sense of being in a band and teammates and camaraderie, but also like running scales and doing corvairs, all the stuff and telling a story and being funny, all those things was just in one place. And the fact that it was pure creation, it gave me my purpose. And honestly, it's given me my career. It's given me my best friends and Dr. God and Big Yellow Taxi and all those crews. It's given me the woman I love. It's given me lots
Mhm.
and lots of great relationships and people that are still here to this day. But also, it's just been mostly it was that first year of it, and then meeting Miles Stroth, my mentor. I make no bones about that. I'm Miles Jr. I met with him a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, he did a podcast. He was like, I called you. I hope this is okay. I wanted to make sure I called you my protege. Is that fair? Do you find that insulting? I was like, no, dude. I tell everyone. But I was like, thank you for using protege. I normally say whore, right? Forgive my language. But also, so meeting Miles and finding that's where it all just clicked in the first 5 minutes of his class. Back then, you got Miles for level 5, and all 8 weeks was just learning the deconstruction. Then eventually, what became out of that, his philosophy of position play, which is also a thing that I'm known for. Just the first 5 minutes of that class, I was like, whatever this guy is selling, I'm buying. Like that just hit. And so, we'll talk about deconstruction at some point, I'm sure. But to me, it's as much a philosophy as it is an improv form. I use it everywhere. Everyone that touches it or gets really into it gets really into it. There's,
Mhm.
Adam McKay, who was on The Family with Miles and Ali and all those guys, and Flynn and Besser and Ian Roberts. And yeah, I said Ali. I don't want to leave anybody out or get in trouble.
Of
Pete
course.
Holney, a bunch of other people were in that. Rachel Dratch. But there's an interview from a couple of years ago, maybe 2016, the earliest. Adam McKay was interviewed in the New York Times and he brought up the deconstruction. They printed it, it's just there. And so I think it has allowed me to find that thing that is not only to hone my craft, but also, like anything, like learning a classical instrument or playing golf or any of those things, or chess. It's one of those things that you can continue to do over and over again until an advanced age and still learn something new and also keep you engaged, keep you sharp. I use decon in every single day. It's and position play as well. So the reason why I keep doing improv is that I enjoy it. First of all, it's fun.
Yes,
That's
it is. It's so
there's
much
only
fun.
I like to, yeah, I like to say that there's only two improv millionaires, and that's Pete Gross and TJ Jagodowski for all the money they made. They probably don't have $1 million in the bank, but those Sonic commercials where they're sitting in the front seat, all those things are improvised. And so I'm like doing the math and like carrying the one and for how many that they made. I'm like, yeah, they had to have made at least $1 million off of that. The rest of us are doing it for fun. So it has to be fun. And then I feel most of the reason why I went into teaching and coaching and directing improv is that I felt honor, and I still do. I felt honor and duty bound to give back the thing that has given so much to me. Improv saved my life. I wouldn't be here today. I honestly believe that. So that's why I keep doing it.
Can you expand on that a little bit more, that improv saved your life? What do you mean by that?
Oh, I was a very angry young man, even through college, and I don't want to bum out anyone listening. I'm a survivor of child sexual assault from a family friend. I suffered through depression and ideation for years and years and years. I like to tell people the best act, if you like my performance in a show, you should have seen me between the ages of 13 and 24, where I was thinking about killing myself every day of my life. That's
Mm.
pick any one of those days, and that's the best acting you would have ever seen me do. Right. And then so finding improv when I did was very helpful because it's the first thing that tells you that you are enough.
Yeah.
I'd been in bands, I'd been in debate, I'd been in team sports. I was successful at all of them. I was good. It's not that I wasn't funny or popular, but that's not how I saw myself because that's not how the disease works. That's not how depression works. This one
Yeah.
was the first one that said, no, it's okay to be you. And in fact, we need you to be you. And then just smoothing out the rough edges and bringing the temperature level of my internal, what Bill Hicks called a bottomless pit of rage. And I was like, oh yeah, I feel that. So having that and having that home to go to. The great thing about
Yeah.
IO West was its people. So being able to go to a place, even when you didn't have a show, even when you didn't have a rehearsal or a class, even if you weren't going there to see friend's show, you knew you could go to that place, sit in the bar and see at least 6 or 7 people that you knew that were happy to see you. And a lot of that, especially in Los Angeles and in the film industry, it is a tough town and you need that sort of support system. There was one time I was very honest with John Conroy. We were having a couple drinks and we were outside chatting outside of IO West. And I think I just blurted out, I was like, why do you think I always come here? It's the only place I'm important, you know? So it's, yeah, I mean, it's true, but it's that kind of thing. So I shudder to think where I would be or if I would even be on this planet without improv. And I usually, whenever I say that stuff, there's always usually at least 1 or 2 people, especially if it's a workshop or something like that. There's always usually 1 or 2 people that hang out and I can see them. Yeah, I clocked you. It's all right. Let's everybody else say thank you for the class and all that kind of stuff. And then you and I are going to talk and we're like, all right, we're survivors. That's the first and most important part,
Mm.
right? A good law of averages states that there's somebody in my class who is felt that way or is currently feeling that way. And if I can be open with that and say that it gets better, and if you like what I do and you think I'm somebody to admire, then that can be, if I did it, maybe you can do it. And so how can I not? How can I not do that? Right. So that's what I mean by that.
Thank you for sharing. I
Of
appreciate that. I
course.
haven't heard you say that. Thank you for sharing that. I know it can be tough. I'm surprised, in your School of Arts classes, you never took improv. Were you more focused on filmmaking and behind the camera, behind the scenes?
Yeah. Also, I'm from a small town of High Point, North Carolina. I knew what sketch was. I watched on TV, obviously SNL and Monty Python, and I was at the right age when we had a big storm once and the cable went out. When the cable came back on, we just magically had HBO, and we had
Oh,
HBO for like
what a
13
gift.
years, and they never yeah, they never charged us. So I got to see all those young comedian specials. And that's right when I became the right age for when the Kids in the Hall debuted in like 93, 94. So I had all that, but I didn't know what improv was. Like everybody else, I saw reruns of the British Whose Lines It Anyway, but I thought that was just a thing that you had to like, that was for something else. That wasn't available to me. And even on campus, there was only one improv show ever on campus. And I didn't go see it because I had to work crew that weekend. And it was called The Wings of Larry Bird. It's a great improv team name.
That is a great
There's
name.
four guys. It was like Brett Gelman and John Daly, who are actors that everybody knows. They're in a bunch of stuff. Vadim Newkist and then Alex Nold. And Brett's from Chicago and he'd missed improv, so they just put together an improv show and did it like at the Commons, rented out a room there through the school. It wasn't until I moved to Los Angeles, and then even then it took 3 years. I didn't know what the
Yeah, that's right.
groundlings were. I didn't know. All of my stuff was film. So once I became aware of it, yeah, right in. But
Yeah.
yeah, there was now at School of the Arts, there's an official improv troupe on campus. I've worked with a lot of them now. Once they move out to Los Angeles, I found out one, she was the one that founded it. I was like, there's an improv troupe there now. You don't understand how lucky you are. I would have killed for that. So,
That's promising
yeah.
though, right? The times are changing,
Mhm.
improv's growing, spreading, people are excited.
Yeah.
You don't just have to be in Chicago or LA or New York to do improv
Mhm.
anymore. That's great.
Now, I think you could argue that there was always the big three territories for improv: Chicago, New York, and LA. Chicago is still Mecca, it always will be.
Yeah.
But the best work is to say that the best work is only happening in Chicago. I don't think is fair, and I don't think most people wouldn't say that. And I would give a hefty side eye to anyone who would say that
Mm.
now. But I think it's fair to say that there's a big five, maybe six, where you have New York, LA, and Chicago, but you also have Austin, San Francisco, and Portland. I think it's fair to say that those three also should be in the conversation. There's a big six now versus big three. They have all of those places have multiple improv theaters who've been around for over a decade and new ones coming every day. There's my friends at Kickstand in Portland just opened their brick and mortar place this month. I would say those are the big places, but also the best work is happening in places like, I've said this before, I'll say it on every podcast. Pawn Takes Queen, which is a trio out of Cedar City, Utah, the off the cuff people, Wendy and TJ Penrod and Ryan McLean.
Yes.
Yeah, I think they're doing some of the best work in the country. I will put Pawn Takes Queen, I'll put their show up against any show, any improv show on the planet. And I've been all around. They will not embarrass themselves. You can put them on the same bill as Beer Shark Mice and they'll hold their own. So there's great stuff happening in Denver. There's great stuff happening in Tampa Bay, Florida, Ybor City, specifically in the
Oh.
Countdown Improv Festival. Poland has a great scene. Dublin has a great scene. I watched a duo at the Ireland Improv Fest just back in November called Tangled, where they do tango dancing in between their improv sets.
What?
And I probably cried like four. I cried like four times.
That's so cool.
Yeah, some of it was so beautiful, and also some of it was me just being a little weepy and being in a traditional Irish pub drinking a Guinness. And like, this is what the art form is capable of, right? So there's great stuff being done everywhere now. So that's good. It's improv is so ubiquitous. Everyone knows what it is, even colloquially, even just
Right.
regular people. The straights, the squares even know what improv is now, man.
Oh, I love that. I love that shout out to, Wendy and TJ, Pawn
Mhm.
Takes Queen.
Every
Shout out
time,
to them. That's great.
every time. This is not my first podcast where I've said that. So.
I'm sure they appreciate it. So, BOC, when was the turning point where you decided you not only wanted to perform, improv, but you
Mhm.
also wanted to teach it and you felt like you could teach it to others? When did you feel that?
Ooh, I think looking back on it now, I think I started coaching pretty early in. I think I started coaching around maybe like 2007, which
Okay,
seems
so about
fairly
4
early to
years.
start
Yeah.
coaching. Yeah, it was early into the journey. But again, you have to remember that like I inhaled improv. There's the quality triangle
Yeah.
is a thing that we borrow from the corporate world, which is fast, cheap, and good. Pick two, because that's all you're getting. It's a big problem with the film industry. They want things cheap and fast and good, and then it ends up being not cheap, not any good, and it didn't come fast either.
Right.
Reshoots and all those kind of things. So I picked fast and good. So I sacrificed a lot. I missed a lot of things because there was times where there was probably a good solid first 3 years, 4 to 5 nights a week, 4 to 5 hours a pop, me watching improv or taking classes or performing or that. I think Miles put it best. Obviously, I quote him a lot, but that's because he's correct a lot. Just asking. Uh, he says you're ready to coach when someone asks you, and that's what
Right.
happened to me. Someone, friends of mine, were starting a group. That was a group called Rohan Will Answer. It's a great name, great team. Jill Sarnowski and Ashley Canese approached it. I was actually dating Ashley at the time. And I was like, would that be weird for you? She was like, no, no, no. You're a great improviser and you're not mean. I wouldn't be dating you. We wouldn't be living together if you were mean. So why would you be mean as a coach?
Right.
Like, oh, good point. So they asked me if I would be interested in coaching. So Miles says you're ready to coach when someone asks you, right? And then Eric Honeycutt, who I think is fantastic, he was in Savannah, Georgia for a while. He just moved back to Chicago. If you have a chance to study with Eric, I think he's one of the greatest that we have. He's not only a great improv teacher, but he's also a great theater director, like scripted theater. He teaches viewpoints. He's one of the few people allowed to teach
Oh,
viewpoints.
yes.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And he gave me a great piece of advice. He said, you're ready to teach when you can demonstrate the lesson without embarrassing the student.
Yes. That's so important.
That to me is the key. It's like, all right, when I hear about someone teaching, that's the first thing that pops in my head. Can that person demonstrate a lesson without embarrassing the student? And there's been a couple of people recently where I'm like, oh, buddy, you're not built that way. It's enough to get, but like, I have to duck some haymakers when I perform with you. I don't know if I'm trusting you to demonstrate the lesson without embarrassing the student, but it's rare. It's very rare that happens.
Can you explain what that like, without embarrassing the student, meaning, like, make them feel bad or
Make them feel bad, but also even if there's no malice behind it, because that's another thing. Josh Nichols, who co-owns the Rise Comedy Theater in Denver with Nick Armstrong, I got this from Nichols. He goes, "Presume no malice." He goes, "I
yeah.
always try. Come on, man. I always try to presume no malice." Same thing. So if there's even no malice behind it, are you able to demonstrate the lesson to where the student then doesn't think they're stupid because, oh, it's so easy and so simple. How am I not getting this?
Ah,
Right? Is
yes.
there, yeah, is there any way you can say, because you've seen me teach before, what I'll do is I'll say, hey, pop out for a second. I'm going to pop into the scene just to demonstrate what we're trying to go for here. Because I'm failing with words. So I'm starting from a place saying, I'm not even perfect right now. I'm finding it hard to describe it. So if I can maybe show
Mhm.
it, and then when I do it, I always immediately then turn and go, now this is just the way I would do it. You could probably do this in a different way. So just let's do the scene again. Now you just find your version of that. So I'm always making it seem like this is not what you're supposed to do. This is just how it's done. And this is how I personally would do it because that's my specific type of comedy. I'm really into dark comedy. I like creating dark joy. I am able to get away with a lot of heavy material where maybe other people wouldn't because that
Mhm.
is my wheelhouse. Now you hop back in and then you've given them an opportunity to do it. And then I'm like, see, there you go. Now you got it. And so they're like, oh, okay, got it, got it. And then can I say this? I'm like, yeah, of course, try it. And then I'm always encouraging people like, there's no dumb questions. Please ask it. Law of averages states that at least 3 or 4 other people in the class who are also thinking that, but they're too
Yep.
embarrassed to raise their hands. So they're like, oh, thank God you asked. I didn't know what he was talking about. And then also, this is an art form that there's no such thing as an 100% improviser. No one's going to get it right all the time, right away, or ever. So just being able to demonstrate the lesson without embarrassing the student also means, it doesn't mean just be kind. It also means be helpful. Is this practical? I know there's all great improv teachers who are like, the great thing about improv is everything is a gift. And you can, I'm like, yeah, that's nice to say and it's nice in theory. But if you're in a workshop or a class or rehearsal, you're a student, like what Kevin Dorff calls skin in the game. They're only going to do it if they think it's going to make them better. And if you're not showing them something that's going to make them better, then you're just wasting their time, right? That's my quote. That's not his. So I think with
Mhm.
coaching, it's you're ready when someone asks you. Teaching, you're ready when someone allows you. You have to put your hat in the ring. Some institution has to say yes, at least initially, before you can go off and start your own thing. Although there are several people that skip that step and just go and start their own thing. Maybe just because of the nature of their situation, where we don't have an improv theater in the town I live in, and
Right.
camp is only four times a year. Now I only get to go one camp a year. Somebody's got to do it. Might as well be me. And then I'd say directing, because I do think there's a difference between coaching, teaching, directing. Directing is when you want to do it. That's the only. You can't. Coaching is someone asks you to do it. Teaching is someone allows you to do it, and directing is you want to do it. You believe enough in this theory, or you believe enough in this concept of a show, that you go and say, I am going to do this, and I'm going to do it this way because this is my vision. No one else can give that to you. They just can't. Right?
Thank you. Thanks for explaining
Of
and
course.
clarifying that more. I wanna talk a little bit about the deconstruction,
Yeah.
because some improvisers may not have, I know, right? All the jazz hands, we're excited. uh, some improvisers may have not heard about it or they may not do it. Like, I honestly have not seen it offered that much except at camp. It's not out there that much, but you're keeping it going. You're keeping it alive. And
Yes.
why? Why do that?
Yeah, my nickname is Johnny Decon Seed, and I'm happy to do it. It's a big portion of the reason why I travel everywhere is because A, I just want to see more decon. Like the only way I can see more deconstructions is if people are doing them, and the only way people can do them is if they learn how to do it. And since I'm the guy,
Yeah.
I get it. Although I will say Christopher George is a good friend and a great teacher. He has started to do deconstruction. He's the director of the decon team at the new IO Chicago, and he's starting to travel and teach now. So
Oh,
I'm very
good.
encouraging for him to do that. He absolutely should be doing that. But he's like everybody else. He's got his own approach to it. He's got his own thing. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants. We're all nicking things from each other and building on top of it. But for me, the deconstruction is like, yeah, I'm happy to carry that torch because it is, again, it's a philosophy as much as it is an improv form. I use it as an approach to all my creative endeavors. It just makes so much sense and it's deep. What I like about it is that it sound on paper, it sounds hard.
It looks hard on paper.
Yes. And then once you get on its feet, it starts to make sense because it's not comedy math, it's comedy truth. And it's these things of taking away the millions of options it could be of like, not just this. I think ultimately what I find is funny is that as the deconstruction looks hard on paper, what it really does, and it's inherent in the name deconstruction, is that it sort of demystifies improv. It takes the magic and like, oh, I could never do that. I'm like, oh yeah, you can. You just do this and then followed by this and followed by this. And if you just do that form, that will always work. It took me 20 years, but I finally cracked the nut on how to do a deconstruction movie, and that's gonna be the next thing I write.
Ooh.
I owe a guy, yeah, I owe a guy pages. I owe a producer pages on a screenplay. I'm currently writing a pilot about my hometown of High Point, North Carolina. And the next one is the decon movie because I already have it all beat it out. Just 12.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't worry. Any of the people that have ever taken decon from me, you're going to read it and I'm going to ask you for notes. So that's going to
Uh-huh.
happen. So, yeah. And so I think it's just that important. And so therefore, it's important for me to make sure that it's not lost to the ages, but also, again, a big part of my improv goals is to help people and teach them. And at first, we inspire, and nothing has inspired me more than the deconstruction and position play and Miles' friendship. I'm honored and humbled for that guy to call me his friend, much less protege. So I got to go. I got to go to the people. I got to take it to where they are.
And yeah, for anyone listening who is like, "What is the deconstruction?" I'm assuming most of our listeners probably know, but if you don't, let me see if I can go from memory. So there's a 5 to 7 minute grounded scene. There's
Yes.
2 to 3 minute thematic scenes, which is kind of like
Yes. Two to
art,
two and
like
a half minutes. Yes.
emotion. Yep, emotion, animal. It could be any kind of like artistic kind of movement scenes. And then you go back to the grounded scene. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
for how long. Is that 2 minutes? 2 to 3 minutes or so? Ti Yep,
2 to 2.5 minutes. Yep. Absolutely.
yep. And then we go on 5 scenes of exploratory, I think I'm using a different word here,
Commentary
commentary
scenes.
scenes, 30 seconds to a minute back in the grounded scene, and then you go on the run, which is could be like 5 to 7 minutes
Exactly. And then you ended with that
with the
last fourth and
grounded
final.
scene. I
Yeah.
promise I did not review my notes, so I still know the
Very,
structure, and I know
very
time is
impressive.
loose, time is by feel more than, like, by minutes, but yeah, okay, I still got it, I still got it.
Yeah, thank you. It's pretty close. Yeah, like commentary scenes are the preference would be 90 seconds to have them feel more like sketches. I tell people 90 seconds so that I can get 30 to 45 seconds. Two commentary scenes are always edited too soon. And that's just because
Okay.
the game isn't, yeah, the game of logical absurd isn't being hit the sort of way. But that's all right because that's how people are learning it. You learn by doing reps. And then I always tell people, like, yeah, it's a little flexible. Once you're comfortable with it, then you can start moving things around. You can start going based on instinct. It's as long as you're starting slow and smart and ending fast and funny on a trajectory because it's cooking, it's not baking. Baking, you have to be precise, or otherwise the whole thing is done and then the souffle will fall. Cooking is more of like, nah, you can do some fusion stuff. You can throw it. You can taste. Maybe it needs a little bit more salt. All right. Yeah, you don't want your sauce to break. But really, it's all just personal. Who are you cooking for? Who's the audience? And then you can play it on air, right? So I also worked in restaurant kitchens for a long time, and bartending for years. So calling it what we call the dance, being able to weave in and out of different people and different time sets of like, all right, all these tickets came in, appetizers need to go out in 6 minutes, entrees in 8 to 10 minutes. But you also have to make sure that if the waiter put all of them in at once, you have to still just send out the apps. You have to do the math. Same thing with bartending. If you're slammed, you're like in the weeds, 3 people deep, 6 people deep, you're just doing the dance. It's the same thing with the decon, to be sure, but very, very impressive. You've got the skeleton right there.
Yeah, I'm actually really impressed with myself too. I alluded it to when we were talking earlier, like the intensity of it, and those thematic scenes, I think, really helped me with intensity because I'm not gonna lie, I've been doing improv 3 to 4 years now, my improv journey.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them have been talky scenes,
Yeah, I
and
hate it. Hate it.
right? And just I think honestly the decon class might have been my first experience where it was like, no talky, like, use the whole space, use the room. The stage is the room, not just where you're in front of people. And that freedom to, like,
Yeah.
move around and then flow as an animal, I think in practice we were a bear moving together, like,
Mm-hmm.
how experiential. It was really a cool feeling.
I usually use ethereal, but I like experiential. I usually give people the examples of improv. There are many different types of improv scenes, or there's many different ways that an improv scene can look, right? I mean, there's position play, there's only the 4 basic scene types, which I believe, but the way that things look, and I usually try and encourage people when it comes to thematic scenes, is to think of it more like Cirque du Soleil or Blue Man Group or the movie Baraka. If you haven't ever seen Baraka, Baraka is a great movie that I saw. Yeah, it's a documentary with no dialogue, and that is basically
Oh,
about the history of civilization. The guy who made it,
okay.
I'm blanking on his name. It's fantastic. Baraka, Baraka. For all intents and purposes, it is a 70 millimeter documentary about the history of human,
Oh,
like civilization.
wow.
It's yeah, it's fantastic. Highly recommend it. And so it was so funny when I started getting into the deconstruction because I saw Baraka in film school and it's like one of my favorites. And so I went back, I was like, oh, Baraka's just a decon. Oh, got it. Got it. Duh. And I start going through all the scenes. And so, yeah, there's a section in Baraka where it's because this guy took a 70 millimeter camera and dragged it all over the globe. Like he went to places where it would be like he slept up a mountain. So with these big heavy ass cameras to get this gorgeous cinematography. There's a section early on in Baraka where they're in a rainforest. They're with an indigenous tribe who are doing a dance slash ceremony that they're all working together. And you can see me rocking back and forth. And there's one guy leading it. An older gentleman, clearly a respected man in the tribe, leading the line. And it's brilliant. And so I usually show people that. And I'm like, you give me that in a thematic scene, then you're doing it right. If you're aiming for that, if it's 2 people just talking, no. Also, the deconstruction, we just did 5 to 7 minutes of maybe 2, maybe 3 people talking, people being in the background. You don't want to do another 2-person scene talking and then go back to those 2 people because then you're like 12 minutes into the show and maybe 6 people have been on stage. We ain't got no time for that. Let's do big group stuff, group scenes, group paintings, giving
Mhm.
people, a different stage picture to do that, a different tableau. So I usually say, if you think one of the people in the opening scene is being wishy-washy and you want to do a thematic scene about that character, well, then I would love to see the 20 of you be a wave, literally an ocean wave, and run out into with all your arms attached, crest out over the people, get to the 6th or 7th row, and then wipe away. If you just do that for 2.5 minutes, there'll be the person watching will be like, oh, like I'm rolling, like I'm coming in, but I'm leaving again, and I'm coming in, leaving again, like I'm powerful, but I'm really, oh, do they think I'm being wishy-washy? Like I'm being like water? Okay, I'll be more like water. There, that's what it is. I'm trying to find a new word other than thematic. And I've told Miles, I got his permission to change straight absurd to logical absurd. He was like, yeah, that's more correct. Because a
Yeah.
lot of people, when they hear thematic, they think theme. And a lot of that comes back from like
Oh, okay.
traditional public school and universities where you start talking about like freshman composition. People think theme, they think they have to have this big thing. Or And this is what is worse. They think they have to know what the entire show's about. Like the way you would be like,
Mm.
what's the theme of this novel? You're like, oh, we're not done writing it. we have,
Yeah.
we got a whole lot more shows. So I'm trying to find a different word than the word thematic. So if anybody has any ideas, please send them to me. Because people hear theme and they go, oh, so is the show supposed to be racism? I'm like, oh no, that's too soon. It's
That's
like writing your
right.
obituary when you're 30. You got too much time left. Can't write your obituary.
And I'll just say those grounded scenes are usually pretty intense, deal with some intense topics,
Mhm,
life,
mhm,
death,
yeah,
divorce. At camp, it was like
mhm,
infertility or trying to conceive and have kids, kind of family issues. Those grounded scenes get pretty tough. The
yeah.
structure that the decon allows for it to expand upon it without having to hear those
Mhm,
words being spoken to, which is nice.
yeah. A palate cleanser, a sorbet.
Yeah.
I tend to always, yeah, I try and as much as I can. It doesn't always have to be dark. It doesn't always have to be
I know.
serious. It
I guess
doesn't,
the ones I've seen have been, yeah.
yeah, they just tend to go to that because people are like, all right, grounded, realistic. And then they think dramatic, they think drama. And
Right.
if I didn't have just one weekend and like your group at camp was really great. And I remember afterwards, like you and Eric Escalante and Jessely and all those, everybody was fantastic. I remember one point thinking like, oh man, I would love to have you guys for 8 weeks, where one week I would just force you to like, this opening scene is just two roommates trying to figure out what they're going to order. And whatever it was like, that's because you had sex with my girlfriend. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
Nope. Line
Don't create
37, that
drama.
didn't happen. We're just talking. Do we want pizza or do we want Greek food? Do we want to order Chinese or Thai?
Mm.
Just Indian food, just doing that. And then I would prove you would do the piece. And then at the end, you'd be like, oh, you are capable of doing a deconstruction where the opening scene doesn't have to be about a miscarriage. I'm like, yes, it doesn't have to be about a miscarriage or a miscarriage of justice. It can just be, oh man, I'm too tired to cook. What do you want? Oh, we had Greek last night. That would be interesting. I also try and
Mhm.
tell people like if it's helpful because some people learn visually. If you go to my YouTube channel, the real Brian James O'Connell, it's easy. Just type in Brian James O'Connell YouTube into Google and you'll find it. I've got a found footage 10.5 minute decon that I put together because some people learn more visually. I made a 60-second one for TikTok. So it's just like if 10.5 minutes is too long for
Oh,
you,
wow.
here it is. Here's the form. Yeah. And so I usually try and tell people the opening scene, the grounded scene, it's a short film. It could be a slice of life. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. There are slice of life short films, 5, 7 minutes everywhere in the country. There are websites, there are streaming services that just show short films. You can find them on Amazon Prime, right? And then it's thematic scenes are a dance piece, right? It's there's contact improv, which is literally just that goes back to the 1970s. It's literally just people moving in motion on that. And then think of the commentary scenes as like sketch comedy. It's 90 seconds. You're trying to make a point. You're trying to take the piss out of something. You're trying to satirize or parody something, which is the people in the opening scene and the goofy stuff they're doing or the life decisions they're making. And then the run is just
I love the
chaos.
run.
It's
It's so
just
chaos.
the run the run is you just strolling through your phone. The run is you just clicking through trying to find something to watch. Nope, I don't like that. Nope, I don't like that. It's
Mhm.
tender, right? It's just this is stuff that makes sense and then it gets faster as you start realizing no, I don't want that. I don't want that. I'm looking for the thing. I'm looking for the thing. And then the last scene starts comes because then that's the movie that we settled on. And now we're showing it to you. And a lot of times we go back in time because that always works. Great. Now here's the beginning of the movie. And so the real deconstruction starts when the lights go out and people leave and they go home and then they're like, you have a good relationship with your dad, right? Like, we're like, hey,
Mhm.
when we ordered Chinese the other night, you gave me a look. Is that friends? I have a gluten allergy, so it's just hard for me to find things to eat. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I never knew. That's the deconstruction. So that's what makes
Mhm.
it a philosophy as much as anything else. As you can tell, getting me to shut up is the problem
No,
because talking
keep
about this stuff.
going. What I remember you telling us in the session was that our goal is not to learn the form and demonstrate it to our peers, that we know the form and know the structure. Our goal was to create a meaningful and memorable experience for the audience and even for ourselves. And
Yeah.
I think the audience got something out of it. I think Craig, who was in our group, got birthed in the run. There was a whole birthing
Yeah.
scene. It was quite wild.
Yeah.
Um, So I think goals achieved all around, but that goes for all improv, right? Like, I know in my head, I go, okay,
Mhm.
I want to have a good scene, one for my ego to think that I'm good at improv, and then also for people to
Sure.
like me. But I think if we step back at the core of it, we're here on stage to create a memorable experience. And like, are we getting that with the talkie? And if not, okay, let's expand and do something else.
Yeah, a good example I heard of that once. Because again, it's not about proving that you know your instrument. It's not about
Mhm.
demonstrating repeatable, regurgitated skill. Some people I like a lot of music. I'm a huge fish head. I've been to over 30 shows. So I like seeing people playing their instrument. I like seeing virtuosos. I like seeing excellence, but also the Ramones and Vernon Reid. He was the guitar player in Living Color, still is. They're still a band. He remembers like listening to a Ramones song or something like that, and his brother, oh god, was it Vernon Reid or might have been Muzz Skillings, the bassist, the first bassist for A Living Color. But he said that his brother, who was also a musician, sneered and turned his nose up. And he was like, I could play that. And then the response was, yeah, but could you write it? Could you
Mm.
write something like Blitzkrieg Bop? Can you write something like Sheena as a punk rocker? At the end of the day, the notes or the technical proficiency isn't really important. It's technical proficiency in any art form, specifically improv, is only important if you need to have that level of skill and technical proficiency to get what's in your head out to people, to be able to convey the emotion of what you're feeling. Yeah, like you need to be as good as Eddie Van Halen at guitar as if that type of creative expression is what's in you trying to get out. If you can't play that way and you're hearing music that you're not able to get out to the world, yes, that's very frustrating. But boom, 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 it's equally as valid. And it's oftentimes I'm often impressed and even more I think more highly of a person if I find out they're really good at their instrument after I've already seen them play stuff that I didn't think needed that sort of level of technical proficiency. And then you see that happens all the time. What was John Mayer initially famous for? Wonderland. Your body is a wonderland.
Yeah.
He's one of the most incredible blues guitar players in the
Right.
world. It's only after
Right.
that where everyone was like, holy shit, this white boy can play. Oh my God. It's the same thing with improv. When I see someone have really fun shows and they're always grounded and they're always like taking stuff, they just seem to be confident. And then later on, I see them in some show that's like really difficult technically, or that it's really self-involved as a theatrical presentation. I'm like, oh, it's the old Shaquille O'Neal meme of him like, I have to apologize to you. I was not familiar with your game. I didn't know you were as good as this. And it's even more impressive where they don't feel the need to see how good I am at improv. It's, okay, like, yeah, technical proficiency in anything, but especially improv, it only has to be conducive to your level of what you're trying to express. If you need to be really technically proficient, like an improvised Shakespeare or a JTS Brown or a decon, because that's the stuff you crave and that's the stuff that you love, absolutely, by all means. If you're just like, nah, man, we're just a bunch of guys and gals and non-binary folks get together trying to make each other laugh, and you make each other laugh real, real hard, then goals achieved. You
Right.
know, no, yeah, no one's. Oh man, Johnny Ramone couldn't play guitar well. I'm like, no one thinks nor cares about
Right.
that, right?
You
Yeah,
said you use the decon in your everyday life. How do
absolutely.
you do that?
Oh, well, you have to remember that every time you leave your house and interact with anyone, it is an improv scene.
True.
Even if you know them very
Yeah.
well or they're strangers, it's a brand new scene, right? So, yes, just like in improv, the better you know someone off stage, the better you're going to be able to perform with them on stage. But there are all star shows and jams and lotteries. There are plenty of times. So, it depends on if you want to go out into the world and think of it that way. That's how I do. That everything is an improv show. Mike Myers said life is a slow herald, or he said the end is the beginning of the end. He said one of those. But I feel like that's for me. I was like, every day is a decon. Because when I go, say if I get into a lift, that's either going to be a realistic scene or a logical absurd scene based on how the guy answers my two questions, which I always do. Being in customer service, I don't like to treat people like they're a vending machine. That's a
Yeah.
human being. You can interact with them. And sometimes it leads to crazy great things. And sometimes it leads to like, okay, my first question is always, how you doing today? And based on their response, I'll know whether they want sort of a quiet ride or if they're like, yeah, pretty good. All right. They're open to it. If they're open
Mhm.
to a human interaction, my second sentence will be, what do you do when you're not driving Lyft, if you don't mind me asking?
Nice, that's a good question.
Yeah. If you, what do you do to drive for Lyft, if you don't mind me asking? I follow so many DJs on Instagram now because they'll play me. They're like, oh, actually, I'm a DJ. And they'll play me their music. And I'm like, yeah, go. They're like, what's your IG? I'll follow you. I had a really great one a couple of years ago where I got in the lift. It was a wonderful middle-aged black woman, probably like close to my age. And she just traffic was bad. We are coming back from LAX, come back from the airport. And so it was like a
Mhm.
45-minute conversation. And I'm so happy that I asked the question, what do you do when you're not driving for Lyft? You don't mind me asking. She was like, oh, and she handed me her card, which I threw away immediately when I got home because I don't want to have to explain how I have the card of a dominatrix who runs her own sex club in downtown Los Angeles.
What?
Uh,
Wow.
yeah, that's not a thing I do the dishes, Liz does the laundry. That's not a thing you leave in your pants for your girlfriend to find. I
Uh-huh.
was just like, yeah, I was like, thank you so much. Yeah. So we just talked about that and it became this great sprawling 45-minute. See, because it wasn't about sex, it was about, weirdly enough, it became about management. I was like, yeah, that's not the first time she stole from me. It's the first time that she got caught. Thank you. And I raised this girl. If she needed the money, I would have given it to her. She could have just asked, of course, right? And we're connecting on that sort of deep edge. And then that's the opening scene. I literally got off a plane, got into her car, and that's the opening scene of my day. And it would be crazy to think that doesn't affect the rest of my day and how it goes on. It changes everything. Every time I go into a Starbucks or I have to call, my health insurance got all screwed up. So I had to spend 3 days ago, I had to spend a ton of time on the phone
Oh,
on wait.
no.
Here's the great thing about improv is taught me how to be a better person. So I'm not going to yell and scream at that person. It's not their fault.
Right.
They're just doing a job. If anything, it's probably my fault for not opening the letter soon enough and finding out in October that it was changing and I didn't have the same plan as before. And number two, it's an opportunity for me to work on my craft. How's it going, dude? First of all, can I ask you what your name is? Kylie. Kylie is very nice to meet you. I'm hoping you could be a help to me today. It's a transaction scene. That's a logical, absurd scene.
Right.
Flip
Right.
that at Lyft. If I'm going to Lyft or a cab, like my grandfather worked for Yellow Cab in Chicago for 30 years. So I've been around that sort of essence all the time. In the Lyft, if the person's, yeah, I'm doing pretty okay. And then it's, oh, I'm in a logical, absurd scene. I'll be the
Mhm.
straight man here. Work this out.
Yeah.
To wit, I went to my doctor's office and had a 10-minute conversation with my Lyft driver, who by the end I was like something is he was telling me about how because I said something and then I was like, oh, I'm sorry, that's the part of me and my girlfriend's love language. She was like, well, it's good that you know each other. We just started talking about relationships. I told him the story about my ex fiance and what a nightmare what she was, and then he told me the story about his ex wife and went through the whole thing. And as he was saying certain things, I was like, wait a minute, I know it. Why do I know what that is? Why do I know what that TV show is that he's talking about that this person is on? Because he was like, yeah, my ex-wife was also an actress. I was like, okay. I was like, I won't ask what show it is because I don't want to be go. She was like, oh, no, I'll tell you right now. And he told me the name of it and the character that she played. And I got out, I sat in my doctor's office. And I'm very good at remembering things, but I'm also very good at research, which is
Yeah.
why I have over 2,000
Mhm.
improv related hyperlinks. And then immediately I found he was talking about one of my best friends and who has worked with Dr. Godover, and he was lying. His side of the story was unconscionably wrong.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I, yeah,
Wow.
I just got off the phone with her like last weekend, where she was with one of the other members of Dr. God. They have a TV show that they're working on and developing, and they just put me on. They put me on speakerphone. And we told the whole thing, and she told me her side of it, and we laughed and laughed. And she was like, "Please tell me you didn't give him 5 stars." I was like, "I give everybody 5 stars, but I
I
didn't
give
tell
everyone
you."
5 stars. Yeah.
Yeah, so every day is an opportunity for you to, and every day is decon, every day is improv scene. I feel so much better about going in to order a cup of coffee at Starbucks where me and Jessica are about to hit the road to go to Camp Improv Utopia. If I'm like, hey, how's it going, Daryl? Daryl, is it okay if I just say large? I don't have to say venti. Okay, thanks, man. Like, yeah, that's can I have a name for your Yeah, it's Brian, Brian. He's like, oh, hi, not why. Never why. Never why, Darren. Never why, right? And then we can have an exchange. Worst case scenario, they go home and then they're like, their person's like, how'd it go? That was great. Oh, it's this one guy, Brian. He was emphatic that it had to be I and not Y, right? That's these things are these are stones. I get to work on my craft. I get to be a better person. and I get to send the stone into the lake where the ripples go out, which are a little nicer and a little smoother and less choppy, versus using every interaction as a this again. Oh, I hate lines, right? I don't know. Make friends with the person in front of you. Make friends with the person behind you in line. Just go, by the way, I haven't eaten today, so you are in no danger of getting farted on, my man.
Oh,
Just why
God.
not? See what happens. Right? Every day is a decon. Use in real life all the time, to be certain.
I love that, because if you get into a Lyft or taxi, whatever you're riding in, and you're, like, looking on your phone and scrolling, that is no but language, like, you're closed off from the conversation, you made it
Mhm,
clear you don't wanna talk, and to be fair, you can choose to want that. However, if you
mhm.
are open to talking, there's so much you can discover and learn about a person, and I think so many times in general, we go, "Oh, I hate small talk. I hate talking about the weather at work and,
Mhm,
oh, like, the holiday or the weekend coming up," but that is how you get to meet people and learn, and, like,
mhm.
discovery is a big word for me in 2024, so that is how you get
Nice.
to discover more about people and learn about them. So I like that. It's a great way to open the door and just see if they're open to conversation or not. They may not be.
Yeah, that's happened too, where it's just sometimes they're just from the vibe, it's like, all right, this is a job for you. You don't want anything. I'll go back to reading my book on my phone. Or
Mhm.
sometimes too, just having the antenna attuned, especially living here in Los Angeles. Not everyone English is their first language. Not everyone is comfortable
Right.
having a conversation like that, especially if they have. Usually, my clue is if the Google Maps or the Waze, whatever map app they're using, if that's in a different language than English,
Oh,
then I go,
yeah.
"Ah, blah, 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 blah." I was just like, "Hey, hello, how are you? It's very nice, thank you." And then I'll read my book, but when we get to the destination, I'll make a point of, "Thank you so much for getting me here on time. I really appreciate you have a great," letting them know still personable. And then they're usually like, "Oh, yes, thank you, yes, thank you." And they're like, "Okay,
Yeah.
good." I still make them feel like a real human being, but again, this is one of the ways that how can you demonstrate the lesson without embarrassing the student? I didn't put them in a position where they're like having to struggle and put into a position where they're having to like translate in their own mind and not being able to the words for it. And there's other guys too that just can't shut them up, right? Like I talk
Yes.
too much, I know, but there's been certain guys where I'm just like, I'm just gonna lay back in the cut because this guy has all the things to say, all of them. It's never really backfired on me. So
Yeah, and you got some nice juicy drama, some tea from that Uber Lyft driver.
yes,
Yes, it paid off.
yeah, we have laughed so hard, and even off camera, it would be too long of a story to go in detail. You would just be like, "What?" Like, yeah, yeah, he's yeah. For example, he was like, just real quick example, because also I don't want to give anything away. It's her personal life.
For
It's her
sure,
story to
yeah.
my friend, but it's oh yeah, because he was like, yeah, she emptied all the bank accounts. Yeah, because it was all her money. You hadn't worked for 7 years, you ding dong, right? It's like but you only find that out afterwards. Yeah, he'd said the name of the show and the character she played, and I was like, why do I know that? And then I sit in the doctor's office. The funniest thing the entire time was me sitting in the doctor's office, which again, it's in Los Angeles. There's some people that speak Spanish as their first language, some people that speak Korean as their first language, people that speak Armenian their first language. And I come in looking the way that I do, the scariest guy in the world, white guy with a beard and a hat. Like that guy's going to be a mass shooter, right? I'm the most dangerous guy. I check in, I sit down, and 30 seconds later, I just go, "Oh no!" And then everyone's just like,
Couldn't
"What's
contain
going on?"
it.
That's I couldn't because I just literally typed in Google. I typed in the name of the show and and there's her name come up. I was like, "Oh, ah, yes, hilarious." We'll move on before I give away too many more
No, yeah.
details.
I
Myself in
love that
trouble.
philosophy of discovery and, yeah, just treating every day like in a decon or position play, like you said. So I've got some more philosophy questions for you, improv philosophy questions. One that I really love that's actually stuck with me from camp was I don't know, I think someone said, "Oh, I haven't done improv in a while. I've taken a break, so I might be a little rusty." And you were like, "I don't believe in rust. That means you don't have any bad habits that you're taking with you or that I have to correct. So there is no rust in improv." Do you still believe that? Is that still true?
100%. I've never been wrong. Anytime that anyone has ever told me like, "Oh, I'm super rusty," or "Oh, I'm just getting back into improv," it's been like 2.5 years. A lot of people did that during quarantine because they're
Right,
like, "I just
right.
can't do Zoom improv. It's not the same." And so against their will, they had to take 2, 3 years off from improv and then just started. slowly getting back into classes or jams, or just reached out to me for advice of where to start that path. I was like, you're not rusty. You're not rusty. You've just forgotten all your bad habits. You've forgotten all your go-tos. You're a little smarter, a little wiser. Remember that fast, cheap, and good? It was good and cheap. It just wasn't fast. You had more time to think about what you missed about improv, what you thought about. Oh man, I missed improv. You're thinking about the stuff that went well. The stuff that went well is all the stuff that we've been told and have been telling people since day one. Slow down, respond to the last thing said, make your other partner look good. The ego is probably less now. You're also probably not going to be as confident in going in, so you're not going to make steamroller moves. You've just
Mhm.
forgotten all the stuff I would have to correct you. You're just listening and responding. Oh, doy, the thing they told you in your first ever improv class anywhere was just, this is yes and this is what we listened. Okay, now that's good. But remember, what she said is that we're at the park. So you have to agree to be at the park. I would have to be at the park. But it's okay. You said firehouse. So maybe it's a firehouse that leads out to the park. And now all the firemen are having, and fire ladies are having like a barbecue out there. It's like that stuff doesn't go away. The stuff that goes away is all the bullshit and the ego and the,
Yes.
well, I've got this really great, like, I've got this sassy lady character that I play all the time. It's, yeah, you're not doing sassy lady because you're like, maybe don't remember how to do it. Or you're like, you've been gone for a while. You're like, oh, am I going to do sassy lady character? I'm not going to try to do it. There's no such thing as rust. It's just not for any improviser. I mean, the exception if you took 1 2 month class and then didn't do it for 10 years. Yeah, you're not rusty. You just don't know anything.
Right.
Yeah, but if you're like 3 4 years in, you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing.
So you also say there's no cheating in improv. Use all the tools and skills you
Absolutely
have
not.
practiced or used in any show at any time, like your interaction with Uber, Lyft drivers. You can bring that into a show if it calls for that kind of character, right? Anything in your life you can pull from.
I did a show in Dublin for as part of the festival. It's the first night I was there. All-star show from a bunch of different people I hadn't met before. I literally met them 40 minutes before I went on stage. But Neil Curran was there. I was in
Oh,
that
he's
show,
he's
as
been on the
was
podcast. Yeah.
yes, of course he is. As well as Ferran Luengo, who
Oh,
from
yes.
Spain, who lives in London now.
He will be on the podcast.
Yes, first time we'd ever performed together. And we were so excited to do it. We were like, we've never done a show together before. We've never done a scene together. It's gonna be great. My very first scene, he's driving a taxi and I get in. I said, are you open? And he said, you mean physically or philosophically? And I just sat down. I was like, all right, that's fair. That's a fair question. What are you struggling with right now? We did the lift ride and it was great. And it won't, and like, to his credit, not to his credit, because he's a great improviser, he got out of the car and got in the back seat with me. And I was like, all right, that's fair. I was like, you know what? I brought this on myself. This is okay, right? And then Neil came out and he became the driver. And we're like, yeah, you're going, is it okay if you go? He's, yes, of course. And then we just talked. And then, so I'm doing the thing that I've done hundreds of times. Every improviser, every artist in the world, except for improvisers, feel like our practice and our study and our honing our craft isn't available to us when we go to perform. A guitar player does not run scales for hours upon hours and then go and perform his rock show and not do any of the stuff that has I've been practicing a minor pentatonic blues scale for 7 hours a day this week. So when I go on stage on Saturday night, I better play Lydian only. Like that,
Mhm.
we're the only ones that do that. All that stuff is available. I have done that scene thousands of times so that when I get on stage, it's great.
Yeah.
So I ask the big questions like we all do, right? And all great art, truly great art, is about one of five things: mortality, sexuality, political structure, social structure, and religion. Miles gave me that. I try and get that into my improv scenes as organically, but as quickly as possible, because then there's always a place to go. Ferran's first line was physically or philosophically. I was like, no, we're
So
ready to
good.
go. And it's and he ended up asking me, he asked me like what the meaning of life is, or if there's a God, or like something along those lines. And this is something I've been thinking about for probably going on 5 years now, since 2019,
Mhm.
that I think probably the most accurate, the accurate approach to religion is probably from H.P. Lovecraft, which is very hilarious considering that he was a virulent racist against the Irish. So if he was here right now, he would spit in my face, to be certain. But
Mm.
the idea of cosmic horror or Lovecraftian, And I literally said it. I said it in the, I was like, the gods are terrifying and beyond our mortal kin. The best thing that you could possibly ever do in this life is to not gain their attention. We would even be shown a glimpse of the image is like an ant walking across a microchip for 1 second, finding out what a microchip is, which means he knows what electricity is, he knows what human language is, he knows what radio waves are, and the internet, and Bluetooth, and he takes another step, and he's just an ant again, and has no concept of how he can explain that. He can't tell the other ants about it, but he knows it. He knows it deep in his mind. That is what it's like for someone to see God. If you, the best, Ponce de Leon did not give a fuck about trampling an anthill as he was searching for the fountain of youth. Why would we dare dream that things of immense power would have any concern for our well-being? The best thing you can do is be kind, keep your fucking head down. Good day, sir. And I got out of the cab. Right?
Bravo.
Thank you. And everyone's yeah, ovation. People are like, sure. I'm like, yeah, but I've been thinking about that and saying that to people for almost 5 years now. When it comes up, it's not a thing that I just bring up of like, hey, you guys ever think about maybe like things like Cthulhu are actually
Right.
real? And this whole like the whole like Western thing that we have the idea of Jesus rising from the dead, that's all bullshit, but really it's just like 1,000 monsters that just have no concept or care or pity for us. I can't bring that up anywhere. It's not dinner conversation. That like my
Right.
girlfriend would be stabbing me under the table with her fork. But in those moments, yes, we talk about be yourself on stage. That means come with it. And if you worked on your craft, you worked on these things, say those things. You can talk about them passionately. You can talk about them at length. And the more access, the more, like you say, being open. What was your word for 2024? You were saying
Discovery.
discovery, being open to more discovery. That stuff is there. Will McLaughlin, who's a great improviser, who I love to death. He's a UCB guy. He's played a cop in I don't know how many different shows because he lived in New York and now he lives in LA. He was a cop on Law and Order SVU and he was a cop in Parks and Rec. That guy's played a cop in everything. He famously told a student once, do you know how much submarine lingo I walk around with in my head every day, just on the off chance that I'm going to be in a submarine scene in an improv show? And that's it. That's the level of like, you have to bring all those things in. And using the stuff that you have on your own. Our job as improvisers is to replicate recognizable human behavior and present on the stage in such a way that the audience recognizes their own humanity and reveals that revelation through the form of laughter, to have a longer discussion, a deeper transaction of ideas. I know for a fact that someone left that show and was just, what's that ant on the microchip thing? To bring it all the way back, that's not cheating. That's something I read. That's something that I
Right.
keep. Someone explained on a message board somewhere what cosmic horror is. And that's what it is. It's an ant walking across the microchip. So yeah, did I write that? No. Was it written? Yes. Did I use it the same way that I could quote Shakespeare? Or I would say a favorite part of a book I once read. Is that cheating? It's not. But there's a lot of people that think that's cheating because it's all that's from something before, right? It was from a game, like a tabletop game message board. It was like, people, especially games, get Eldritch Madness wrong, and a lot of it's really such a shame. An ant doesn't start babbling when they see a circuit board. They find it strange. To them, it's a landscape of strange angles and humming monoliths. They may be scared, but that is not madness. Madness comes when the ant, for a moment, can see as a human does. It understands those markings are words, symbols with meaning, like a pheromone, but infinitely more complex. It can travel unimaginable distances to lands unlike anything it's seen before. It knows of mirth, embarrassment, love, concepts unimaginable before this moment. And then it's an ant again. And echoes of those things it cannot comprehend swirl around in its little ant brain, and it cannot make use of this knowledge, but it still remembers. How is it supposed to return to its ant life? The more the ant saw, the harder it is for it to forget. It needs to see it again, understand again. It will do anything to show others, to show itself. Nothing else matters. Nothing else in this tiny world matters. That is madness. I just read it to you right now because it's on my desktop at all times. So me using it in that show in Dublin, is that cheating? I don't think it is. Does the people in the audience think it's cheating? No, it's something I read somewhere. Now it belongs to me.
Well, and they probably have I'm just gonna guess, they may have probably never heard that before ever, and so now you're giving them a new idea in the form of from the character's perspective, but also you're so passionate about it, it's like, "Whoa, that's so
Yeah.
interesting."
Yeah. And I didn't even quote it word for word. I was just like things beyond our pale kin. There's no mention of Ponce de Leon in there, but
Right.
that's where the deconstruction comes from. It's yeah, an ant. That's oh god, the same way that we have trampled ants. Oh, Ponce de Leon was looking for the fountain of youth, a thing that is ludicrous, that no human being today thinks it's possible to have a fountain of youth, right? Even though there's still human beings that do it, like that guy that's swapping out his son's blood for his own blood and claims that
Oh. Ugh.
he has a penis of a teenager now. Yeah, billionaire crazy guy that takes 100 pills a day. It's still there. That's
Ugh.
madness.
That is
That's
madness.
madness. The idea, yeah. So that Lovecraftian thing I've been working, and that all started for me writing a true crime. I went to Mandan, North Dakota, there in April Fool's Day of 2019. A chiropractor by the name of Chad Isaac walked into a real estate company and horrifically stabbed and shot 4 people, and
Whoa.
no one knows why. I don't think his lawyers know why. I physically went there. I went to the trial in
Wha
Mandan, North Dakota. I
what?
sat 30, 30 feet away from Chad, and that guy absolutely did it and does not believe he did it. And so when I went to start writing the script, I was like, I can't just do this like a Fargo or Killing. I can't just do like
Yeah.
a procedural, because the notes I would get would be people being like, so many executives be like, that can't happen that way. I'm like, but did I don't know what's his motive. He didn't have one. I don't think his defense attorney knew what his motive was. No one knew all that. I think it's CTE now. I think that's from my research.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I just, I was like, yeah, I have to add some sort of mystical or spooky thing to this to be able to write it. And I had invested so much time and money. And like the ant with the microchip, the case was in my head. I was like, I have to write this. I have to write this. And I was like, oh, Cosmic Horror, Lovecraftian, that makes sense. And then that's where 5 years later,
Okay.
I'm sitting in Ireland with my Spanish friend and my Irish friend doing a lift ride that I've done 1,000 times a day. There's no such thing as cheating in improv. If it works, it works. If you and I had written down every word and went out on stage and did every word that we had written down ahead of time, then it would no longer be improvised. It would be scripted. So
Right.
hence, there's no such thing as cheating in improv. It has ceased. It's think of it. I'll say this last thing and we can move on. I think of it similar to the theory that I really like, which is when people talk about, oh, so much about the tolerant left or whatever, I'm like, you have to be intolerant of intolerance, because it's a social contract where we're going to compromise, we're going to work together, and we're going to keep each other safe. If you want to kill people based on their race, their color, their creed, or xenophobia, whatever it is, then you have broken that social contract. And now you're no longer covered by the rules of that, the laws of that contract, which mean therefore you are no longer allowed tolerance. You have broken the thing that gave you that. I cannot compromise with fascists who want to kill my female and transgendered and queer and people of color friends, because there's no way for any of my friends to only be half dead. Right. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's the
Mhm.
same way. If like you have to be intolerant of intolerance in the same way that there is no such thing as cheating in improv, because once you've written it down, it's no longer improv. There you go.
Mhm.
Crazy
Uh,
journey. That's how my brain works every day.
well, I love it. No, this is just like a glimpse into BOC's head, right? This amazing recall ability,
Yeah.
just
Now you've gone insane like that.
the madness is happening.
Yeah, it swarms around there a whole bunch.
Well, where
Yeah,
do you see your journey headed to? You're teaching a lot everywhere, a little bit in LA, not that
for
much. You're kind
sure.
of expanding, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of going everywhere. Fall of 2022, I knew the strikes were coming. The WGA and the SAG
Oh.
strike, and I knew they were going to be tough, and I knew they're going to be long. I just felt it in my bones, and I was
Mm.
like, and since and quarantine, previous to that, in quarantine, we did the second season of our TV show, Dr. God's TV show, Held In. We did the second season remotely, but then that show went away because they started doing lots of layoffs or that kind of stuff. And
Mm.
at a certain point, they've laid off so many people that nobody knows who you are anymore, so your show's gone. And so I
Ah.
knew that there was going to be a lot of people out of work. There was going to be people looking for doing stuff. And I was like, I need to hit the road. I need to be out of town, and I need to do stuff that there's going to be a lot of people with bigger names and better resumes than me. And also, I knew I just couldn't teach advanced scene study or improv to sketch or any of those things, because I'd already been on the road a little bit. And I saw every time I go to a city, either Kevin McDonald from The Kids in the Hall or Rich Tallarico from Key and Peele was either the week before me or the week after me. We were
Mm.
just all in the
Mhm.
same circuit. We were just missing each other. It took until I think October of last year in Utica, New York, right? Me and Rich Tallarico were in the same festival or the same city at the same time. They were doing a trio. He was playing with Bob and Steph. So we went, and I just knew that stuff was going to happen. So I was like, all right, decon and position play are the only things that I do that no one can replace me, right? And so I know how to get out there, but also I knew that I had to start. We talk about who's coming out. Me and Nick Armstrong talk about that a lot. Craig Kikowski to Nick Armstrong, as is Miles Stroth to me, right? I was like,
Mhm.
we're not going to be doing this forever. Who are the next people coming along who's doing that? And so I was like, now I need to not only go out and train all these people and make them aware of deconstruction and position play, because Miles don't travel, right? He and his wife, they've got two small kids, and she works a full-time job, and she's very successful. And so they had a conversation once of like, this is the dollar amount that would make it okay for you to leave for a long weekend or a week to 2 weeks to go teach and leave me with a full-time job and these two kids. And he said, absolutely. And so when people ask Miles to travel, he gives them that number. They go, that's an insane number. He goes, you're right. It is an insane number. No one should pay this. You shouldn't pay me this. This is the number that makes it worthwhile to me and my wife so that I don't get divorced. Right.
Wow.
So,
Good
yeah,
boundaries.
so
Really good boundaries.
very much so. They're great. Kristen, I love Kristen to death. And their kids are great. They don't want to be away from them. They're awesome. So there's that part, but also I feel like, all right, it's not only on duty bound for me to go to these places. I know it's an opportunity to be a special occasion because it's an out of town person coming in, a person that has somewhat of a reputation or a name, whatever that might be. But also, it's an opportunity for me to bring theaters together and have those communities work together. I always work it in my things where I don't do non-compete clauses. And if I'm going to teach a class at your theater, it should be open to the entire community, just not the people that perform or take classes at your
Nice.
space. That's never happened, thank God, knock on wood, but it is something I have to say early and often because that's important to me. And now what I'm doing is really putting in the idea of have to make these connections, making sure that these people all know each other and work with each other. So the two things I have coming up, I'm traveling a couple places to be certain, but the two big things I have coming up in the beginning of this year is I'm trying to do what I'm calling a Rust Belt tour. Lots of theaters are like, we'd love to have you, or I meet people at camp. They're like, we'd love to have you come and teach at our theater, but we're so small. Or there's only 7 improvisers in our community. It'd be really tough. We just couldn't afford you. And I was like, all right, yes, and pitch positive. How do we solve that problem? I reached out to 41 theaters from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, all the way through Green Bay, Wisconsin, and said, I will hit the road. Whoever theaters sign on, you guys split the bill for a plane ticket to get me to where I'm starting, a plane ticket to get me back, and somewhere to stay that isn't someone's couch because I'm old and I've got a bad back while I'm there. And then if someone needs to take the class for free and in exchange, they drive me the 2.5 hour city to the next city, so be it. And then I'm just going to carve out this little tour, get all these people to work with each other. And there's some theaters that are already into it, right? Get them to work together. And then what I'm doing is trying. There's a version. I'm a big punk rock fan as well as lots of Fish. I'm all over the place, eclectic with my music taste.
Yeah.
But Black Flag and SST Records, with Greg Ginn, there were no punk rock clubs. But in the early '80s, they carved out a scene where they would go and play anywhere. They would get in the van and drive and go and play anywhere. And so the 16-year-old kid that got them to come play his parents' basement, 5 years from there, he's running his own. 5 years after that, he's running his own rock club. They carved out of stone from nothing this punk rock club circuit that everyone
Yeah.
plays now, from your Blink 182s to your Green Days and all that. So I thought, what if I do that? Huge Henry Rollins
Yes.
fan. I have 2 tattoos. I've read his thing. I was like, let me carve out this path so the people behind me can have a workable circuit, people in place, a path and a route that makes sense. It grows every year. So I'm doing the Rust Belt one, and then I'm trying to do one in Europe in the late spring,
Ooh.
like May going into June. So right now I'm talking to Christoph in Vienna. I'm talking to a guy, John, in Zurich. My boy from Greece just got back to me yesterday. I have to get him back. And so trying to do the same thing there of just split the cost. If 8 theaters get together to bring me out, a plane ticket that's $500 might be a backbreaker for a theater. But a
Right.
$500 split 8 ways, and they're one-way tickets, and I'm moving closer back to home on my way, why not?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
those are the 2 big things I'm working on for 2024, and I started thinking about that in the fall, just how I thought about, oh, I got to start touring and making money in the fall of 2022 because I know these strikes are coming. And also, I knew when the strikes are over, there wasn't going to be a bunch of stuff ready to go.
Right.
That's not how the studios work. So those are the two things. And then my all improv, I try and do a boot camp and once every couple of months where it's 6 hours of the day. It's all online. It's all Zoom. You tell me what you want to work on. I'll curate it. I keep each class to 10 people and you tell me if you want Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So that way, also I know some people can't afford to travel, but also people can't afford to spend 8 weeks in a class. You can do one
Yeah.
day. I could give you a day and then you can tell me, ooh, can I do the morning of Friday and then the afternoon of Saturday? Yes, because it's flexible. It's curated to you. And I keep it super affordable, $100. I give you 3 months notice, 2 months notice, 6 weeks notice. I'm doing this. You can scrounge up $100. You can get, hey, can a buddy of mine come too? Absolutely. Sign up together. 10 people, you have 6 hours, $100 for 6 hours. That's drop-in prices, but I'm making a good chunk of change, and it's costing me one weekend. I would love to do one every month. I wouldn't have to travel as much.
Right?
If it's 3 days, 10 people, $100 a person, that's $3,000. I've made my nut for the month. That's good money, but I'm not charging you $700. I'm not charging you $1,500. I know other people that charge that, and God bless them. If that's what the market will bear, that's your rate, please do it. I charge what I charge because a lot of my goal is to help as many people as possible. And at $100. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Right.
I was fortunate enough to take your in-person 6-hour all
Yeah.
improv class in December, and, those 6
Yeah.
hours flew by. I was like, "Wait, I want more." I think we all wanted more. We all stayed an hour later and chatted and stuff, and
Yeah.
I will
At some point, I
say
was like, I got to go home and eat.
right? I know. And I will say what I appreciate about you, BOC, of course, the inspiration, your philosophies. I mean, I was reviewing my notes that I took, bringing some of that into this interview. But also, you go on some good tangents. They're great. But you always know what you were talking about. You're never like, where was I? Why was I talking about it? You always know
Yeah.
why you were talking about it. And that I appreciate because there are people who will go on tangents and they'll be like, how did I get here? And you're like, I don't even know either. How did we get here? You always know how you got there. And that's a good skill.
As we've seen several times in this podcast interview alone, I've done it a couple times, but I promise I'm always going somewhere. And also, every once in a while, I do see a person just like, okay, let him go. He's getting there. But when I use examples or if I say something specific or if I'm bringing up a reference or I'm reenacting an improv scene that I saw or did from 10, 15 years ago, all of that
So
is on
impressive.
purpose because thank you, but it's all directed for the student. It's all, again, our first job is to inspire and people learn in a myriad of ways. Some people
Mhm.
need hard reps and they need hard notes. Very few people who have ever told me like, oh, you can be harsh with me, man. I don't want rough notes. I'm like, no, you don't. And also, most of you just know the Happy Sunshine BOC. You don't know firm director BOC. Look, this is what we're doing, right? There's why it sucks, and I'm just not going to argue about it because if I give a reference or I do a reenactment or I make a suggestion or I bring up a book for you to write down and check out, you never know what the thing that's going to make the light bulb go off a student's head. So I need to throw as many things at you as I can, but I always know that I'm coming around to the lesson because the lesson is how can I demonstrate it without embarrassing you? So I never liked the improv as institution era. I'm glad it's gone, where it's just a hard, firm curriculum. You have 18, 19 people crammed into a 3-hour class. You have to get through 5 exercises. And it feels like a table at the Chili's 2 at the airport where you're just turning and burning and trying to get people through. And I'm like, not everyone can learn that way. And I also don't think it's the most conducive way to learn. And finally, that's why I started the all improv thing. And I started thinking of myself more as a librarian and less as a teacher and curating these classes to the
Yes.
students in front of me, teaching the people in front of me. Is that I just, at one point, I went, I think it was a conversation with Miles actually, having a couple of beers, and it dawned on me, I can't remember how I said it, or it just dawned on me that we are constantly, as teachers and instructors and coaches, asking the student to evolve the art form, but we haven't pointed that same lens back at ourselves
Mm.
and evolved the way the art form is taught. If you're still
Mhm.
just doing 5, 6 levels, and it's level 1 is intro, level 2 is game, level 3 is characters, level 4 is the herald, level 5 is create your own show. That's fine to use that as a structure. Structures work for a reason. That's why the term institutional knowledge exists. But inside of that, are you leaving breathing space? Are you leaving question and answer? Are you leaving 15 minutes at the end for people to go, can we just do that thing one more time? Are you allowing your teachers the flexibility of this in the curriculum or what the exercises are? But if you have an exercise that you like more or you know well that gets the exact same lesson across, feel free to replace it with that. It's just when it was like, no, this is our curriculum and it's finite and it's dogma. I just don't think that's been proven to work. And any of the places outside of improv in our larger structures like the Pentagon or the Catholic Church hasn't worked out real well. Dogma. Like maybe time. We spent the last 8 or 9 years, I say from 2015 to right now, really in the fuck around part, especially in this country. And now we are hopefully, knock on wood, entering on every level you can say mortality, sexuality, political structure, social structure, religion. A lot of those we are entering the find out. Lots of people are finding out right now that you cannot continue living this way. You cannot make people continue living this way, nor can you just get away with literal murder anymore.
Right.
So things are changing.
Yeah.
So that's my silver lining. That's why I developed it. Because again, if you ask the students, I don't know what it was. I was like, I think I was bitching. I was like, there's no new forms anymore. Where's the new deconstruction? Where's the new JTS Brown? Where's the new blah, blah, blah? And then I thought about it. I was like, we don't practice what we preach nearly enough. All we show people is montages, heralds, and mono scenes. Why would a new improv student starting now or have only been doing improv for 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Why would they even know? They've never seen it. They've never seen Quartet. They've never seen Stolen House. They've never seen a deconstruction. Guess I got to hit the road again, right? I guess I got to take it to the people. I have to demand more from myself.
I appreciate that because I relate to that as a speaker. Sometimes we get so caught up in our content. I must hit every single piece of content and share all this knowledge. And I've got 5 tips, 5 things that you have to take away from this. And then I rush all those 5 things. And then people leave and go, I don't remember what she just said. And why should I care? But if I leave space for reflection and only do 2 tips or 2 things to focus on, and I give you space to reflect or ask questions, then you get experience, you learn from it, you get to relate the topic to your life, and you get so much more out of it. And I think sometimes just some improv classes I've been in have been very like, to the T, we have to do all these exercises. Let's keep moving. Let's keep moving. And at least in my journey, I'm at the point where, of course, with this podcast, I'd rather talk about improv sometimes too, but also like, I want to hear your experience. Okay, you let go of perfection. That's what I need to discover in myself. And no amount of reps, I think, is at this point going to do that. Like, I need to really do some internal work to then put into the reps. So that's where I am in my journey right now.
Yeah. No, I think that's beautiful. I think that's beautifully said. The idea of I need to do the internal work. So then therefore I'm getting reps for reps' sake isn't anything. I used to tell some of my younger, more eager students, especially the ones that reminded me of me, I was like, if you're on 9 improv teams, you're on really 0 improv teams.
Yeah.
Because because you're not spending any depth of time with them. It's just reps. It's just there to be at a certain point. And I got in trouble a couple of times, but I stand by this. I was like, you have to make sure that you're just not masturbating with other people's emotions. You know what I mean? If you're on 9 improv teams and you're just going to every jam because I need reps, are you leaving any space for the other? Aren't we supposed to take care of the other person, make your partner look good? Yes, and listen and respond. If you're just out there to do the reps and like, all right, guys, see you later. I'm going to hand over to the clubhouse. I'm going to try. They've got an 11 o'clock jam. Then you're just there forcing your will upon them. And you're just masturbating with someone else's emotions, masturbating with someone else's body. Don't do that. That's horrific.
It's exhausting.
I mean, no malice. No malice intended, but it's also exhausting. If you're on a house team, if you're on a house improv team in one theater and a house sketch team in another theater, and you're taking 3 different classes and you're also interning to pay for one of the classes, also you're doing stand-up, then what are you going to write about? Comedy? What are you going to do improv about? Taking a class? Like there's very few movies in the movie industry that are about making movies that were successful. There's very few movies about an actor, the actor's journey and wanting to make it in Hollywood like that are successful. And most of them are either very sad dramas or like thrillers where bad things are happening. You're like, don't turn your improv experience into leaving Las Vegas, right? Where you're just a writer who's drinking themselves to death and hang out with people. So I really love, I think you, honestly, I think you beautifully said the idea of working on the internal work so that the reps have the right purpose and response to what you're wanting to get out of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Really,
you.
really well said. Really well said.
I know that we could keep talking for 4 more hours and do a whole 6-hour all
Oh,
improv podcast. However, I will cut it off just for your sake and to be
uh-huh.
grateful of your time. But I do have one last question, I guess two, but
Sure.
the last one's easy. But
Please, please, please.
final question that I usually ask my guests, yes and mindset or growth mindset, as it's also known. How do you embody a yes and or growth mindset in your life?
That is a very good question. Thank you for asking it. The first thing that popped in my head is a quote from Penn Jillette, one half of the famous magician comedy duo
Ooh.
Penn and Teller. It's ironic because Penn Jillette is famously a libertarian, and I think libertarians are ridiculous. The best way I ever heard libertarians described is that they are house cats. They are absolutely convinced of their own superiority and being in charge, while at the same time having absolutely no clue how anything works, like housing or rent or infrastructure. A cat will walk around your house that you pay the rent and keep the lights on and keep warm and act like it's their house. I feel like it's the same thing with libertarians. But he did say something once that I thought was really that stuck with me. I thought had really truth behind it because nobody's 100% bad, nobody's 100% good. I think I'd have a lot of fun with Pendulette if we were to hang out. I would just be like, dude, I'm not joining your party.
Right.
You guys are ridiculous. He said things. He goes. I try to approach every question or every problem or any issue. Is there any way to solve this with more freedom versus less? And that's kind
Oh,
of where he comes from. And I was, and that, yeah.
I love
He
that.
goes, is there a way we can solve this problem and help the most people possible, but with more freedom instead of less? And I'm a fan of that concept. I'm a fan of Bill Hicks. I'm a fan of Doug Stanhope and those kind of guys. I'm not as bitter and angry as they are anymore. I used to be very bitter and angry, but I think that's what the yes and growth does. Is there every day, whether it's through my craft, whether it's through my teaching, whether it's through my profession as a filmmaker and a screenwriter and a producer and an actor, or is it as just in my personal everyday life with my friends? Is there a way that I could interact with this person that would successfully and satisfyingly, not without compromise, but is there a way that I can interact with this person that would be more successful and more satisfactory to both of us and leave them feeling better about meeting me versus feeling worse about meeting me?
Mhm.
It's a really good question. And I probably have been dancing around this in my mind for a couple of years now. But I think that is the approach where I used to be just a real prick because I hated myself. The reason why I went to school with to college with a lot of famous dudes. And
Mhm.
I was a right prick back then. And that's the reason why you don't see me hanging out with those famous dudes now, is because that's how they knew me. And I don't blame them. I presume no malice. Most of them are cool with me now. They're like, hey, that was back then or whatever. And some aren't cool with me. I'm like, fair enough, because I hated myself so much that I held myself to an impossibly high standard and held other people who did not ask for this. I held them to impossibly high moral and ethical standards. And when they didn't meet it, I looked down upon them and abused them for it, maybe verbally or emotionally, which they didn't ask for and was unfair. I know I have to make up a bunch for that karmically, but also the Irish Catholic in me. But also, I'm like, okay, we lived that way. That didn't work. Yeah. Is there a way where I can enter into every interaction? I was just thinking about this earlier because I know I'm about to pitch somewhere with a person I know to be like, he's not problematic. He doesn't have any issues that way of he should be scorned. But I know it's going to be a tough time working with them because they just the way they treat people or just the way that they have
Mhm.
like maybe just being brusque or just being, I was like, okay, now I can either tell this guy off and curse him out and do all that kind of stuff, and then get what punch him, right? What does that do? That gets me fired. That gets the other people who are my friends on this project. That also potentially scuttles them being able to work with them, all that. Or maybe I can work so hard and turn in such good shit that that person has to kiss my ass for the rest of their career.
Mhm.
Huh? And then maybe, just maybe, because he has to kiss my ass, maybe he'll pretend to be nice. And eventually, after
Yeah.
all that pretending to be nice, he'll just start being nice by accident, right? If I'm being a professional and I'm working hard and I'm giving them so much good stuff that we're all going to raise our level, a high tide raises all ships, we're all going to be
Yeah.
successful. that guy's forced to be around me a lot more, then I might have a little bit more of a comfortability or a relationship where I can say, hey, man, I don't know. I just feel if we go back all those years and it just seems like this is a thing that's always, it's the argument of maybe there isn't, maybe being trans isn't a disease, like you said that one time where you made that off color joke about cutting it off or whatever like that. Maybe it's, if you go back in history and look at this stuff, it's been around for a long time. It's just people feel safer now, even though it's also currently one of the least times ever, the least safe times ever. And then that
Mm.
person can take a moment going, huh, and I work a job, a side hustle where I work with a lot of law enforcement. And I have those conversations multiple times, not specifically on the trans issue, but like multiple issues.
Yeah.
And then I find a way to talk to them in where they're, where without fail, most of them are just like, well, you're putting like, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of it that way. And then we're good. Because
It
I have cops in my family. Yeah. Long and short, I probably know it's too long to clip, but I would say for me, my yes and goal, my growth goal is how can I continue to make sure that every interaction with a person I have leaves them satisfied and successful and feel better about meeting me versus feeling worse.
Perfect. That's a great motto just to live life by, and
Yeah.
how much better would the world be if we were just a little kinder, and
Yeah.
kinder in a way of, like, how can I help you and will help me, like, that balance
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah, Michael Bellavia, he was on my first decon team, the Happy Time Rainbow Bunny Squad. I won't say the names, but he was saying the names of two teachers. One teacher that was known for being gruff and brusque and a shithead, and one that was known for being light and airy and positive. And I just remember being outside IO and about to go inside. He said, like, at the end of the day, do we want to be known? Because Bellavia is a wonderful gay man, very successful animation producer. And he goes, at the end of the day, do we want to be known as blank type of people or blank type of people? And that stuck with me. We had chips on our shoulders. We're doing the decon. We're going to blow every other team off the stage, and they're going to eat our dust and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, "Is this how we want to be known?" I was like, "Fair,
Very
fair."
fair.
And the great irony of being a better, more interesting improviser is being a better, more interesting person. He said that shit to me in 2004, and I think last year is the first year where I was like, oh yeah, do I want to be blank type of person or blank type of person? And here's the great thing: the quote unquote bad example that he used, that guy's not even bad anymore. That guy grew
Oh,
and chilled out and mellowed out and is awesome now.
good.
Yeah, it doesn't have the bad reputation. He has a reputation of being like a cuddly. Yeah, he's a bear, but he's a cuddly bear. He's a grandpa. It's that. So it took 20 years for me to pull my
Mm.
head out of my ass and go, oh yeah, you should probably be more of a, it was a Bob Dassie. Bob Dassie's the good example. Do we want to be blank person or we want to be
Oh,
more like
yeah,
Bob Dassie people? So I'll give the shout out to Dassie
for
because that's a good
sure.
example.
This was a nice 2-hour glimpse of what a 6-hour all improv, session looks like, or similar, of course, with the focus of the
Yeah.
attendees in mind. Anyone who's listening, where and how can they find out more about you, BOC?
Oh, all the usual social medias you'll find me. The reason why I use my full Brian James O'Connell is when I
Yeah.
joined SAG, there was already a Brian O'Connell. So they're like, you have to pick a different name. So I was like, I'll just use my full
Oh.
name because I don't want to go by like, I don't want to be Kevin O'Connell or something like that. So I use Brian. So if you type in Brian James O'Connell and improv into Google, you'll find me. I'm
Right.
I'm the guy. Yeah, there's a Brian O'Connell in SAG that was already there. There's a Brian O'Connell who is a bass player in a jazz fusion trio with two guys from India. And there's a Brian O'Connell who is a very successful, very graphic furry artist. A lot of
Oh.
anthropomorphic foxes and cats and dogs
Mhm.
having sex with each other. Yeah, early days of the internet before you had social media where people would just find your name and an email. I
Uh-huh.
used to get sent a lot of stuff for
Oh,
people
n
like, I'm a big fan of your work. Will you look at my art and rate it?
oh.
I'm not who you're looking for. It seems like you are really good at this. I am a sophomore in college. Yeah, I am not the Brown collar you're looking for.
Oh my
And
god.
they either would never email me again, or they would be like, "Oh my god, I am so sorry." Please. I was like, "No, that's it. It's fine. Hey, no judgment, man. No shame. You
It
love
looks
who you
good.
love.
Yeah, you're very
Like,
talented at what you
like
do.
very technical. Brushwork looks fantastic on that. I won't finish that sentence. So
Okay.
yeah, all the social medias at B3OC is on Instagram. I think the real B3OC on TikTok. the real Brian James O'Connell on YouTube and Facebook and all that. If you would like to take an all improv class, or if you have a group that wants to study with me, I give online notes. My friends Daredevil in Wilmington, North Carolina, two of my friends started an improv theater there. They tape their shows and they send them to me as YouTube links, and I give them
Oh,
notes on it.
it's a
So
great
I'm available. Yeah, and I'm good at this stuff because I think about it all the time, but also I'm used to reading people's scripts and giving notes. So watching a show, same difference. So I'm willing to work with anybody. And also, if you want me to come to your town, you never know. Maybe you're like, hey, we're in Phoenix. I'm like, cool. I'm coming out there in February. I'm going to, God knows where all I'm going, man. I'm going to, I'm going to San Luis Obispo to teach a coastal
Yeah, slow.
comedy.
I love the
I'm teaching
slow.
slow. Then I'm going to the Savvy Fest, the first annual
Yes.
inaugural Savvy Fest in Phoenix. Then I'm going to Cincinnati. Then I'm probably going to Buffalo and Rochester. Then Rust Belt tour probably starts where I'd start in Baltimore. Hopefully I can end in Wisconsin because the Atlas Improv has their Endurance Improv Festival. Then I go back to SoCal. And then the next month after that, I'm probably going to Hartford right before I go to Baton Rouge, potentially. And then once we get into May, we're talking Zurich and Vienna and Greece and Spain. This weekend is
Whew.
just me sending a bunch of emails going, okay, we're 3 months out, we're 6 months out. Who's in? And it's just a lot of that. Thankfully, being a film producer and film director, having to keep all those things moving, but also being an artistic director and a bar manager at two different improv theaters. I'll never say never, but
Yeah.
thankfully I've had those skills. And again, a lot of it was, like you said, like internally working. I had to get rid of my Irish Catholic guilt and just put myself out there. So I pretended that I was writing for one of my students instead of writing for myself. Mentally, I took out my name and put in their name, and then just went through every improv theater in the country and the world and sent them an email or contact us on their website and say, this is my name. This is who I am. I would love you to know if you have any interest in workshops. Here's a little bit about me. And then here's all of my material. Here's the workshops I teach. Here's my bio. Here's my resume. Here's my headshot. Here's my professional bio, but also here's my improv bio. If you're interested, great, let's talk. If not, I absolutely understand. And I give them all the information. This is the base rate I have to pay. Give me somewhere to stay that isn't a couch because my back is bad. And this is like the minimum I have to make. So it's worth giving up things and time with my girlfriend. Yeah. And then I've already helped two other people, Christopher George, who I mentioned, and then my boy Chris
Yes.
Alvarado. They're like, when you start traveling teaching, like, what'd you do? I was like, boy, strap in. Here's all the stuff, and here's how I do it. Yeah. And then worst anyone can say is no. I'm talking to people in Reno as well. And since I'm going to be in Reno, that means I'm upstate. I'm up at the top of Nevada. So that means it's just a hop, skip, and jump. I'll talk to my friend Colleen at All Out Comedy in Oakland. She's great. We're so happy. She opened her new space and she was able to survive past pandemic, but also you got the Stageworks guys and Leela, who I've worked with before up there
Yeah.
in San Francisco. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be in Reno. Do you want me to just come over and then we'll fly back from there? No, it's usually just say, hey, I'm going to be around. Is that a good weekend for you? When's a good weekend for you? Are you interested in this? I almost never get no. I get no, yes, but not right now. Or yes, but how would we do it? I'm like, I've already done the work for you. Here's how it works. The great thing about that is I get to make new friends and I get to meet all these people. And obviously I get to put money in my pocket and pay my rent. But this is also in the future, which I pride myself on, of bringing people together. In the future, if someone says, hey, I'm going to New Orleans, what's improv? I'm like, boom. First, you got to talk to Rachel Grissom, who was on Happy Time Rainbow Bunny Squad with me. She does the decon backwards and forwards. She's a great improv teacher, but she does most of her time being a sound mixer on big ass movies. Also, you got Fallout Theater that came out of the New Movement Catastrophe. They literally built a new one out of that. Stay away from this person. Like, I can connect people. It's nothing makes me feel better than getting like a Facebook message from someone like Jared Walter. It's like, hey man, me and Caseta just moved from Detroit to New York, and now we're at the Pit Theater because we're on the same house team, and we spent 20 minutes talking about what a cool dude you are. I was like, then I've done my job. Done my job as a teacher, as an ambassador of the art form. We are ambassadors of the art form.
Oh, that's amazing. And just to cap it off, you're gonna teach at, Camp Yosemite in September? Are you on
Oh
the
yeah.
docket? Yeah.
Sometimes I'll do other places, but Yosemite is always the lock because of the deconstruction, because you learn
Right.
forms at
Mhm.
deconstruction. You're with one teacher, with one form, with one group the entire time. And For the foreseeable future, I'll do that. My hope, knock on wood, my hope is that I become so successful in my film career that I am no longer available, and therefore Christopher George can take over and start teaching the deconstruction in Yosemite, and then everybody wins.
Yes,
That is,
and
yes, I can
make it
go on.
happen.
I can go on late nights with Stephen Colbert. I can tell him what a huge hero he is of mine, not only as an improviser, but as a human being. And then I can tell him about Camp Improv Utopia, and then we'll be sold out for 5 years of the
Yeah.
years into the future, right? Our nonprofit will go off the chain. Yeah.
Hey, you're only a few
He sits
steps
up.
away.
Yeah. Colbert
Mm.
sits on the board of directors of Second City. Why not us? Why
Right?
not Camp? Aim for the sun. You hit the moon. You're still in space, baby.
I love it. BOC, I am so inspired by this conversation. I love it. You have
Thank you.
given so much inspiration, freedom, permission in the classes I've taken and just in chatting with you. I'm eternally grateful,
Thank
and you're doing the hard work.
you.
You're doing a lot of work. Good things are coming your way, of course, and I just appreciate the mindset you have too of just sharing and giving back to everyone.
Thank you.
Because yeah, it's amazing.
That you have to teach by example. We're all ambassadors of this art form, and I realize that I'm not just representing myself, but I'm representing camp. I'm representing Highwire, a nonprofit improv theater in Baltimore that I just recently joined the board of. I'm
Oh,
very,
yes.
very psyched about doing that. I'm representing the Pack Theater. I'm representing the Old Man. I might go to places and I might represent all of Los Angeles improv. So if I'm a
Right.
dick or if I'm unethical in my business practices, it'd be very easy for a person to be like, yeah, I played with an LA improviser once. That guy was an asshole. And then I'm carrying around brushes that I'm handing them and say, brush everyone I represent with this brush. I'm the one handing them the brush. It has to be a good brush. It has to be a kind brush. It has to be a knowledgeable brush. But I would say again, too, and I absolutely believe this, thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate that. But I'm only as good as the people I work with. So thank you so much for making it such a lovely space to be open and to be vulnerable and to talk about the thing that I love that has given so much to me. So that's I'm not doing this by myself.
We claimed to talk all improv today, and we certainly did. We talked all improv. So nice work, BOC. Nice work to our listeners. This has been so much fun. Thank you. And thank you for listening to today's episode. Oh my gosh, isn't BOC just the greatest? Honestly, if there were no time restraints, we probably could have done a 6-hour all improv podcast recording. I don't doubt that BOC had the energy, and I think we could have done it. But this was a nice glimpse into what the all improv sessions are like that he does. I can tell you, I took his all improv class in December 2023. It was at the Glendale Room, and it was on a Sunday in December. And beforehand, I was kind of like, oh, it's December. I've got a lot of stuff to do. Like the next week, I'm traveling and I'll be gone for 2 weeks. I'm tired. I'm stressed. I think tired shows up a lot in my episodes when I talk, but I'm tired. I'm stressed. Like, do I have the time for this? And then I showed up and just immediately I was like, yes, of course I have the time for this. This is absolutely what I needed to hear. This is wonderful. It was so helpful. We spent the first hour just talking about what all the attendees needed and wanted, and really just going over some philosophies like I shared in the second part of the podcast today, some of the philosophies I've heard BOC say, and it's just so helpful to hear. Sometimes I think you go to classes, and whether it's improv or whatever you're working on in your hobby, sometimes there's a rush to get through the content or the message or whatever you're working on, and you don't have a lot of time to decompress and reflect on things as you're going through it. And so I think just having that discussion and hearing other people say, I struggle with this and I struggle with this. I think someone said, I feel like I say no a lot as a character, which sometimes I think I am more like the person is saying no, which then makes the character say no. And we had this whole like deep dive about that. And I think that's beautiful. Sometimes you don't get that glimpse of teachers. You see them perform and you're like, "They're so good, they must have always been good at it." And that's what I'm really enjoying about this podcast is, like, I get to ask people about their journey and hear what they went through, all the issues and troubles they had and the struggles and how they got better as they went on. And it just takes time and practice and reflecting and failing and making mistakes and getting better. I know there's a lot to unpack in this episode, and I won't recount it or retell it. But what I want to leave you with is this. When I took BOC's decon class in September 22, I felt so much freedom and permission to create something like this podcast that I never dreamed I would create. And so to have someone tell me, you have the freedom and permission to create whatever you want to create is so helpful and transformative to hear. And I've been working with a coach now. I've talked about this in other episodes, but I've been working with a coach now for about a year on just my mindset and doing that inner work piece. And actually, last week, one of the things I wrote down is she said, "Dana, you have the freedom to create whatever you want to create." Because sometimes I get in my head, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, are my episodes too long? They're all kind of running an hour and a half to 2 hours with the guests. Are people gonna listen to that? Are people gonna listen to the whole thing? I want this to be worth the guests' time. I want this to be worth the audience's time." I mean, that is how my mind swirls about the podcast and other things too. And hearing her say that, she said, "Your podcast can be 2 hours. That's what you're creating. You are creating a product now that usually puts out longer content, and there is nothing wrong with that. You are creating longer content, and you will find your audience that does not mind and actually likes longer content and uses it while they clean the house or do chores or commute or do long road trips. There's a market for longer content, and it is okay, and it is absolutely fine to create that longer content." So today, as we're talking, usually, in my head with guests, if the episode's running long, I'm like, "Oh, when do I cut it off? Like, I need to stop this because I don't want anyone to hate that it's too long." I didn't do any of that today. I just enjoyed the conversation, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, I feel like we're at a good point. We're at a good stopping point. We could keep going, but just for the sake of time, we hit all my goals and more that I wanted to chat about, so I feel great about this product." And I wanna leave you with that freedom and permission piece that I felt so much after taking BOC's decon class, is that you have the freedom and permission to create what you want to create. You will find your audience that enjoys your content if you enjoy doing it, if you are authentic about it, if you put your true self and full self into it. So, what is that thing? Knowing that you have the freedom and permission to create what you want, what is that thing that you're going to go out and create? And it won't happen overnight. You heard me talk about the podcast and how it's taken a while. I was swirling so many internal judgments and thoughts. It won't be overnight, but you can take one step each day or even 1% more towards creating whatever it is you want to create and really lean into it and give yourself that permission. I needed to hear it from BOC and I needed to hear it from my coach, but now I need to be at the point, and I want to be, and I think I will be at the point where I'm like, yes, I can create what I want to create. And you can too. So you are always welcome to share what it is you want to create, what you're feeling, that permission to create, and what it is you would do with that freedom and permission that you already have. Please check out BOC's offerings. All that he does, he's so much content. He has created so much content in the most amazing way possible. I don't think we talked about it, but for all of his classes that he does, he gives his students a 200 plus page online book slash document that he works on and curates and updates too. It's not just like something with all these like old links on it. It is so much improv information. It is like an improv encyclopedia that he gives out for people who attend his classes. And I'm sure, honestly, if you listen to this episode, he would send it to you because he would be so happy that you wanted it. He has created so much. So please check out all his creations and reach out if you think a workshop or a session would be helpful for your improv community. And then if you enjoyed this episode and you want to share what it is you're working on creating or just want to share your thoughts, what's going on, I love, love, love hearing from you. And I'm just so excited that you're here listening. You can reach out to me on my email. That's Dana, Dayna, at improvislyspeaking.com. You can also reach out to me on Instagram. I'm at improvislyspeaking. Or on LinkedIn, I'm at Dana Gowan. And my website is improvislyspeaking.com for all of my sessions and workshops and services. Thank you so much for listening and supporting Improvly Speaking. I want to remind you that you have and you've always had the freedom and permission to go out and flex your creative thinking. I'll talk to you next time.